Okay, your guys' class was canceled today, so I am getting recorded rather than talking to you in person, so I'll do the best that I can to explain this, not talking to you directly, but my name is Katie Vanderasp. I attended the University of Louisville as a chemical engineer, graduated back in 2022, and after I graduated, I did Fullbright. So that's what I'm here to talk about today, because the deadlines or applications for what you need to do opens tomorrow. So I thought this would be the perfect time to tell you about it if you don't know what it is, and to explain how it works. So, as I mentioned, my name is Katie. I was a student researcher in the Josef Stefan Institute in Ljubljana. So I went to Slovenia. I went to Europe for my Fulbright. And I was there for 9 months researching water pollutant treatment using plasma reactors. So this is Slovenian mountains, and these are actually two of my chemical engineering friends from U of L that came to visit me. So, Fulbright program, what exactly is it? I hope you can see me from the screen. This is their program goal, which by the way, these slides will be shared to you if you can't see it clearly, but basically the way I explain Fulbright is, it is a way to exchange culture among US and also other international countries. So my purpose, I am a representative of the United States. I go to Slovenia, I represent the United States while I'm there. We also have international students that come into the US that are also on Fulbright, but for your guys' aspect, you would be going out internationally. So this is a very old program actually. It was created back in 1946. It's sponsored by the Department of Educational and Cultural Affairs, also known as ECA. And it is administered in the US by the Institute of International Education. When you go over to internationally, for example, when I was in Slovenia, I worked with the US embassy located in Slovenia. Depending on the countries, some countries will have commissions if they're a bigger country or they have more people. Some countries that are smaller, so for example in Slovenia there were 2 people, they'll just be led by the embassy. Okay, so you work as a representative. In terms of eligibility, let's say you're interested in doing this. Basic eligibility is that you need a US citizenship by the application deadline, which would be, we'll get to the timeline later, but it's basically this year, end of this year. You would need a bachelor's degree or equivalent by the start of the grant. So for me, I applied my junior/senior year of college, and then my grant started after I graduated. No doctorate. I don't think any of you guys will have to worry about that, but just keep that in mind. And then also there's some country-specific requirements, and what this means is, let's say you want to go to Spain, you need, at least in my year, you needed an intermediate level of Spanish. I didn't, that's not a, language requirements are not required for every country. It's just specific case-by-case basis you'd have to go and check. So in terms of what this is open to, graduating seniors like you guys, recent graduates, graduate students, and then even people in their early careers. So people who have been working for maybe 2 or 3 years, but don't have a doctorate at the moment. Okay, so what exactly does Fulbright entail? The easiest way I can explain it is that there's 2 types, technically 3. You have the study research grant. So study grant would be getting a master's. Research grant, what I would be doing, what I did, was going to research, but I wasn't necessarily pursuing any sort of degree from it. And then you also have what we call ETAs, or English Teaching Assistants. So Fulbright gives out a lot of awards. It gives out 2,000 plus awards in 100 plus countries worldwide. Most of those are English teaching assistants. They are in less countries as the study research grant, but there's more positions for English teaching assistants. Now, because I'm talking to bioengineers, I'm assuming you guys have more of a background in research, and that is what keyed me towards the study and research grant. This might be more applicable to you guys. So there's less awards, but they're in a greater span of countries. And this is what I did. I applied to study, I applied to research in Slovenia. So I did one of these awards, but actually there was another chemical engineer that did an English teaching assistantship, and there was a bioengineer, Katia, I'm not sure her last name, but she also did an ETA. So just because you're a bioengineer or you're based on research, you can still do an ETA for sure. Just depends on whatever you're interested in. In terms of awards benefits, So let's say you apply for an ETA or you apply for a research grant and you end up getting it, or vice versa. You don't even know what it considers. Why should I apply for this? Pre-grant and in-country, you get all your traveling paid for, so your round-trip airfare to and from the country. You get a monthly stipend. The reason there's a little asterisk on this is because for some countries, you're always going to get a monthly stipend from Fullbright, so US-based Fullbright. You'll always get a monthly stipend. However, some countries give an additional stipend from their own side of things. So for example, in Slovenia, I got a US stipend, but then I also got a Slovenian stipend because I was technically considered a student because I was working in the Josef Stefan Institute. So, you get paid to go there, you get paid to live there, you get what's called accident and sickness benefits, which is basically just insurance. If you're doing ETA, you get a TESOL Fundamentals course, which basically teaches people how to teach English to people where English is not their first language. And then in terms of possible benefits, this is case-by-case basis, you could get support for dependents if you had a family and you're traveling with your family. I got a research allowance because I was doing research in Slovenia. If you're doing a master's degree, you might be able to get tuition. You might be able to get language lessons, so this is something that I qualified for because Slovene language is not very well known and it's something they want more people to learn. And then also any disability-related accommodations. So, those are all potential benefits. And this is all pre-grant and in-country. Post-grant, when you finish your Fulbright, you get the network of alumni. So we have an actual Fulbright association that keeps everybody connected. There's also the State Department's alumni website that keeps everybody connected so you can keep up with what they're doing and maybe see opportunities that you wouldn't have access to normally. You get a Fulbright email address, yay! But the main thing that I like to impress upon people is if you are interested in working within the federal government, you are eligible for 12 months of non-competitive eligibility after finishing Fulbright for hiring status. So basically what this means is 12 months after you finish Fulbright, you get an advantage if you want to start working with the federal government and you apply for a federal job. So that might be important if that's something you're interested in. Okay, this is the main reason why I wanted to talk to you about this. Here's the application timeline. So, April through September, April being now, you start to design your project, prepare for your application, figure out what you want to do. Do you want to teach English? Do you want to research? Do you want to study something? Now, actually, the Fulbright for you guys opens, what's the day? It opens April 3rd or April 4th. So, tomorrow or the next day is when it starts. So this is really the perfect time to get started on considering your application and what you want to do. Campus deadline. What this means is you have your national application deadline. By the way, that was 2024. It's usually early October, but it might be a couple days different for 2025. But national application deadline, everything has to be in. You're done, it's finalized. Campus deadline, University of Louisville actually has a person that helps people with their Fulbright applications, and she will review the applications, give you writing tips, meet with the professors, discuss what your plan is. You'll get her contact later in the presentation. But you want to start working as soon as possible, so tomorrow, because the campus deadline is always usually, if I remember correctly for U of L, it was about 3 weeks before the national deadline. That gave you enough time to give them what you wanted to turn in and get critique back on it so that you could improve it before you had to officially turn it in. So, starting in April, you begin. By October, that is when you're submitting your application. You're done with it, hands off. From November to December, they do a US-based review. So they screen everybody out. It's national screening committees. People who make it past that first stage, that is when you have that host country review. Either the commission, if you're in a bigger country, or the embassy if you're in a smaller country like Slovenia. So US-based screening, then it goes into international-based screening, deciding, okay, are we accepting you as a Fulbright or not? And then March through June is when you're notified of the final selection, did you get it or not? Now, it's a very broad March through June. I believe I heard back near the end of graduation, but not at graduation. So I actually think I heard back in April. So from the start of my application to getting accepted, it was about a year-long process, which is why I recommend you start ASAP. This is, it's close to graduation, so it's something that I would recommend having a backup plan in case you don't get it. But as bioengineering students, especially if you have a background in research, I think there's very promising hope for you guys, and I hope so too. So this is normally where I would ask the class if they have any questions, but you guys are home right now because the weather is bad. Thankfully, I had previously presented this to the chemical engineers, and they had asked questions while I was in class, and I had my friend text me a couple of the ones they asked me. So let me just run through some that I hope maybe are on your mind right now. And if they're not, I'll give you my contact at the end, so feel free to reach out and ask me directly. But they asked me, how long was my research proposal paper? So in terms of the application, the length of the application is, and the way it's set up, is dependent on whether you go for an ETA, whether you go for a research grant, which is what I did, or whether you go for a master's or some sort of studying abroad. So for an English teaching assistant and the study abroad, I can't speak on that as much because I didn't do it, but if I remember correctly, English teaching assistant, you obviously didn't have to write a research grant. It was less writing up front, but they had more in-person interviews. When I did my research grant, I had to write an introductory, like, who am I, letter, which was 2 pages. My research grant was about 8 pages long. And I turned that in, and I didn't have to do a second interview. ETAs sometimes have to do a second interview dependent on the country. I'm not sure how long it would be for studying. I'm assuming you'd have to write an additional paper kind of explaining and justifying this is why I am in this country and why I want to study this specifically and why I'm the best candidate for that, but I can't speak on it. But that is what I had to do on the research side of things. I had to say, look, this is my background, this is why I should be doing this work in Slovenia, and this is my justification for why it's important to Slovenia and both the US, and why it would benefit both countries if you let me do this. So I guess what it would be your personal statement, who you are, your actual research grant. So like when I'm in the laboratory, this is how I'm going to be testing water pollutants. And then also the justification for like why should we consider you to go research in that country in the first place and to look at specifically what you're doing. This was not a question I think somebody asked me, but just to give you an idea, the way I went about even figuring out what I wanted to research in the first place was I went to a professor and I said, please tell me what contacts you have internationally. And then I had my list of countries and professors, and then I interviewed each of them and said, could you support me if I, wrote a Fullbright grant asking for funding to research in your institution? And not only that, but did I like them? Because you're going to be working with these people long term, so really you get to choose who you're going to end up working with. Did I like the research they were doing? And did I like the country that I would be living on? So I would keep these in mind. Now, when you get to the point where you're trying to justify your research, the way I did that was I had figured out Slovenia, I had figured out my professor, because it was a connection that one of my other professors had. But I wasn't really sure what direction I was going to take. I knew I wanted to do environmental. So I did more of a political background on Slovenia. They had just entered the Green Deal, the European Green Deal. One of the rights of the Green Deal is everybody has access to clean water, clean drinking water. Slovene culture is very, very based on the environment and nature and giving back to nature. And so that's where my idea for, okay, let's treat water pollutants came from. My professor had already done work in plasma reactors, so I put it together. Now for you guys, if you have a country in mind, figure out what is important to them and what you could do to benefit them and make a good case for why you're supposed to be there. That's really all it's about, right? You want to show that you're a good representative for the United States, and you want to show to the country that you're interested in going to why they would benefit from paying for you to go there. This is also, by the way, master's in research related. For an English teaching assistant, it's not as hard up front, but there's more competition because it's a little bit easier of an application process. So keep that in mind. Let's see, what other questions? How much research did you do before Fulbright? I did a lot of research before Fulbright. I had been researching since I was a freshman, so came in as a freshman, researched all the way up until senior year. That is not to say that you have to do that for Fulbright. I think what's most important is making a strong case about why you should be doing the research you're doing in that country. Now, if you have 3 years of background research on that, that's great. But I think if you work hard enough and figure out how to word your application, you could get past it if you're thinking to yourself, oh, I just started research as a junior, or I haven't researched at all, I only have a year left. I don't think that's a bad idea at all. Another thing is, okay, let's say maybe you don't have enough research and you don't plan on starting to research. This does not eliminate you from an English teaching assistant position, nor does it eliminate you from a degree pursuing a master's in a country. It's just really, you should have some research experience if you want to apply for a research grant. So keep that in mind too. Let's see, what made you pick your country of interest? I kind of already addressed this one, but it was really, I didn't have any country I was specifically interested in, and so I just found a professor that had a lot of international connections, found those countries and those professors, and figured out which one I think I'd like to work under, and which one I really liked the research that they were doing, and also I liked the place where I would be living. So that is one thing to keep in mind. What was my schedule like for Fulbright? This is a good one. Okay, so as a researcher, when you are applying, you're talking to the different professors. I like more laid-back work, so I went with a laid-back professor. So my schedule was very easy. It was very European. It was come in when you want, leave when you want. We're going to go for a 2-hour coffee break in the middle of the day. Now, I think this is dependent on the country that you choose. It's also dependent on the professor that you choose. So if you know what type of person you are, if you want to get a lot out of it and work all the time, or if maybe you want to enjoy more the cultural side of things too, take that in mind when you're looking for a professor. That's research. The reason I didn't want to do English teaching assistant, and this is one word of caution I'll give you, is that when you do a master's, when you do a study or a research grant, you are saying, I want to go right here to this specific university, and I want to study this or work on this. And I know the person I'm working with, I know what classes I'm taking. When you do an English teaching assistant, you say, I want to go to this country, and I want to teach English. That's it. You are not picking if you go to the rural side of things or if you go into a big city. You're not picking what grade or age that you're teaching. So some of my friends taught kindergartners, some of my friends taught adults. You're also, and this was the main thing that I did not like, you're not picking how much you're working. So once again, I had some friends who were ETAs that were doing 20 hours a week. They would stand next to the full-time teacher and they would help pronunciate something in English. I also had friends that were 40 plus hours a week, no aid at all. They were the teacher for that class and they were expected to develop the lesson plans and plan everything out and get everything done. I don't like that. I like being able to choose what I'm going to do ahead of time. Now, if you are less risk averse, maybe that's something you'd consider. I didn't want to do that. And I would keep that in mind if you are debating on, do I want to do study, research, or do I want to do ETAs? In my opinion, study and research awards are harder up front because you have to find who you want to work with, what do you want to study, what do you want to research, and write that out. But they are easier hopefully once you get accepted. ETAs are the opposite, in my opinion. ETAs are easier for the application process, but once you get into it, depending on the position you're put in, it might be harder than a study award. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, those were the questions that I remember the last time I did this presentation. But please contact me if you have any questions. I had an awesome time on Fullbright. I didn't hear about Fullbright though. I heard it by chance through a friend, and if I hadn't heard about it, I would have never been able to do it. So I'm trying to tell you guys this now in this timing of the application has just opened so that you don't miss it. So my contact, top right, my LinkedIn and my email. I had mentioned there's somebody at U of L that helps you with your application. Bethany Smith is her name. She is the director of National and International Scholarships, so I included her email as well. And then this is, let's say you want a video about how does Fulbright work from anybody else. The actual Fulbright institution, they have webinars, they have an email if you want to contact them and ask them questions. They have a website that talks more about the student program. And they also have, I guess you would say, official YouTube videos as well. You can also go on YouTube and Google somebody else who used to be Fullbright. That's what I did when I was doing my application. But anyways, this is the social media tags. If you want to follow them, not really, I don't care. But what I want to impress you is that this is a really great opportunity. You are in the perfect timing to apply for it. And I think even if you're just a little bit interested, I don't care if you think you can't do it, I think you should try. Because I had a lot of friends actually that I met in Europe that had done it, and they had really done it just for fun, and then ended up getting accepted, and they were wonderful. So, best of luck to you, and like I said, if you're gonna consider doing it and in your application process, reach out to me. I don't mind reading applications or bouncing ideas off it. I'm happy to help. Yeah, so that's all I have.